Yo, what the deal? It's your boy X.E.L.O. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you. Yes, thank you for coming back. But if you are new here, please do me a favor and like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and I'll let you know when I drop another video. Today, what I'm going to be doing is going over the mixing section of the hip hop beat that we made. If you haven't already, definitely check out the last video. I go step by step using only stock instruments inside of Cakewalk to make a beat. And this video is the one actually showing you how to mix that beat inside of Cakewalk only using stock plugins. Yes. So no third party whatsoever, just stock plugins. Let's get into it. Let's go. All right, so here we are in Cakewalk, and this is my dark theme. If you're interested in this theme or my light theme, you can go to xelohh.com, and inside there, I have a whole section for Cakewalk, so you can go to the themes. You can download the CWP file for this video and for the last video. So if you wanted to actually download the last one, you can walk through this video that we're about to go through right now and just follow along if you want to do that as well. All right, but let's get into the video. So let's open up our YouTube hip hop beat 1 and let's see what we can do. All right, so this is our hip hop beat that we made last time. So if you haven't already, definitely check out that last video. And like I said, if you do want the CWP file, it is available at xelohh.com and is absolutely free. But if you do want to contribute to the channel, there's a good way to do that. I have an option where you can actually name your own price, and you can definitely do that as well. But here's what it sounds like. Right? So nothing spectacular out the box, but this would be your first beat inside of Cakewalk. So now we will want to get to the mixing process and see how we would want to mix this track itself. So first thing I want to do is go down here to where it says console. I'm going to click on that. And as you see, it'll bring up my full screen. So if you didn't want the full screen, you can hold down Shift and D on your keyboard. And there you go. It'll split it in half. But I'm more than likely gonna just be working in the mixer area. So I'm gonna hit Shift and D and it'll bring it up to the top of the screen here. As you see, it's already peaking. So we're gonna definitely take care of the peaking parts of the track itself. We wanna make sure that we have buses created as well. So the first thing I wanna do is make sure I get rid of these buses that we don't need. So there's a bus here for this metronome and there's one for this preview. So I'm gonna hold down Shift and click on this one as well. And I'm gonna right click on this track here and I am going to delete the two buses as you see here. So those two buses are gone. I don't need them. And yeah, that's about it. So usually I do like to have buses created. So let's go through making the buses. So I'm gonna right click in here on this side where the master is, and I'm gonna insert a bus. And this bus is gonna be my drums. So let's start with the drums. That'll be like our first bus that we make. All right. And seeing that we made a drum bus, we can actually link the sounds to this bus. And the easy way to do that, this is a kick here, right? So this is kick, snare, and hi-hat. So I'm gonna hold down Shift and I'm gonna click on this number 4. And now all of them are actually highlighted, right? So what I wanna do is right here, this is where you would have your outputs. And right now, all of them are going to the master. So I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard and then click this little drop down arrow. And you see an option here that says drums. While we're still holding down Control, we're going to click on the drums. And now all of them have been changed to drums. And it's just that simple to set it up for the bus. So now if I just solo this, it's only going to play the drums. Right, so now we have our drums actually set up in here for the bus. Really easy to do and set up. Right, so now we have that set up on here. What we want to do is add another insert for a stereo bus, and this one is going to be our reverb. All right, so there's several reverbs that you can actually use inside the Cakewalk. But I'm going to kind of stick to 2 of them just to kind of show you the two that I would more than likely use if I was just using only stock plugins for Cakewalk. So I'm gonna hit on this little plus sign next to the effects, and I'm gonna go to Insert Audio Effects. And what I want to do is find the Cakewalk folder. So this folder here is what you'll actually have inside of your DAW. So you have like your vocal strip, your transient shaper, your reverbs, all of the things that come with Cakewalk should be in this folder itself. I'm going to actually use this reverb here, this Sonitus reverb. I'm gonna click on that. All right, and this is the Sonitus reverb. This is what it looks like. You can have an option for bypass, undo. Here is your mute, so you can mute the input. Low cut, high cut, pre-delay, room size, diffuser, bass multiplier, so you can actually kind of cut into the bass. You have a crossover option where it'll cross over into the other tracks, decay time, and high damping, so it'll give you a more of a damper sound for the reverb itself. You have a dry or early release and a reverb as well. You also have an option for your width, so you can change the width of the reverb itself. You have a stereo option and a tail option as well. I think they have a lot of really good presets in here. So if you click on this preset here, that'll give you an option to go through the auxiliary bus for different sounds and effects that you may want to use on here. I'm probably going to use this massive synth hall. I think that one gives it a lot of space and ambience, right? And you also have some that are made for Sonitus effects. You have like your default reverb, your central station, your cathedral hall kind of thing, your drum rooms, all that stuff is right here inside of this reverb. And I also have like a stereo slapback, which you would more likely would use for like vocals. I think that one works really well on vocals actually. So we're gonna make this into our bus. So let's make it into this massive synth hall. Is the one I'm going to use. I'm going to make sure that your dry signal is all the way down, so you're only getting the reverb. You don't want to actually have it to where it'll double and duplicate the sound. You just want it, the reverb itself, for a reverb bus, right? So this is the Sonitus one that we'll use. I also want to show you another one that a lot of people don't use and is really, really, really slept on to me. I'm going to hit this plus sign to add another effect, and I'm going to go back into Insert Audio Effects. And this time I'm going to go to where it has Overloud. These are the TH3 and the Reverb options that you do have inside of Cakewalk. I think this is a really, really good reverb. I'm not sure why people don't use it. They have a whole lot of presets that you can actually use. You have banks that you can use for hall. So all of these are hall banks, and you can even create your own banks if you wanted to as well. You have a plate bank, you have a room bank, and you have an inverse bank, and here's a 80s and 90s. So a whole bunch of different rooms and different things that were used back in the day in the 80s and the 90s. They have presets for them in here already. Like this hit snare, that one was one I used to use a lot. All right, so you have options for your ends, and here is your outs on this side. So you also have a dry and a wet option on this. You have your main stuff where you can actually do your diffusion and speed and different sets up in here. You have your pre-effects in here as well, and this is for the hall setting. And you have frequency, and then you also have EQ. So you can change some of your EQ settings as well. You also have some more parameters down here. Like I said, I'm not sure why people don't use this. I think it's a really, really good reverb. But, you know, to each his own, right? So if I go to, let's say, the plate, right? And I go to the main, as you see, is missing like one of the buttons on here, but you have a whole bunch of different settings for this. You have your pre-effects in here for your plate reverb, and your frequencies for your plate reverb, and your EQ for your plate reverb. You also have the same thing for room. You have your EQ, your frequency, as you see the frequencies here. You have your modulation and your main, as you see it's still missing some here. And for your inverse, as you see, the main actually has some more things added to it, and your frequency, and it doesn't even have the other option, but it does have the EQ on here. So like I said, I'm not sure why people don't really use this reverb. I think it's actually a really good reverb, but you know, maybe it's just me. So I'm going to go to the plate, and let's do a long and clean one, right? So I'm gonna double click it and it's gonna ask me if I want to do a new one. Yes, let's do this. So now you have all your settings here, and I wanna make sure this dry is turned all the way down. I don't want any of the dry signal. I just want the wet signal to go through, right? So now I have my reverbs set up. Either one of them you want to use. I think both of them will do perfectly fine. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to mute them for now, though. I'm going to turn both of them off. Just so when we go in through the reverbs, you can actually hear the difference when those reverbs are getting played. I'm going to insert another bus, and this one is going to be my delay. And I'm going to hit on this effects, and I'm also going to go back into the Cakewalk options, and I'm going to use the Sonitus delay. Right? So for the Sonitus delay, you have the kind of the same options, and you also have presets that you can actually use in here. Let's go to the going, gone one. I'm going to use that. And what I want to do is turn down the feedback. So what the feedback is going to do is it'll keep adding the delay as a feedback loop for the sound. And I don't want it to be that much. So let's turn this down to probably about, let's do about 20, right? So that way it's not so long that it'll keep going forever. And this also gives you the option to listen to the mix, and you can also sync it with the host, which is probably what it'll do. All right, so I'm going to change this to 88 beats per minute so that it'll be synced with the actual session. So now we have our delay set up as well. So we have our delay and our reverb set up. All right, so now that we have the drum bus set up, our reverb bus set up, and our delay bus set up, let's start on the mixing. So what I want to do is actually pull all of these down, because right now it's clipping, so we don't want it to clip and we don't want it to be too loud. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on this first kick here, and I'm going to hold down Shift, go to the number 8, click on that one to the last track, and I'm just going to hold down Control. And while holding down Control, it allows you to actually move other things as well. So I'm going to move all of them at the same time. Let's drag these down to about -15 dBs, right? All right, so what I want to do is solo these kicks. All right, so I want them to be around this 8, at least -8. And like your kicks are supposed to be the most dominant part of their track. If you're doing any kind of hip hop, any kind of urban music, usually the kick is what you want to stand out inside the track. So you need to make sure that your kick is hitting as hard as it possibly can. Just to make it a little bit easier for everybody, I'm just going to do it from the Pro channel. Click on the Pro channel itself. It'll open this up, and now it'll just go to the mixing option that you can see here on the side. And I want to open up this EQ. So I want to make sure that my kick is hitting the way it should be, right? So I'm actually going to turn on my high pass. I know you may think, hey, why would you cut away some of your kick? But it just needs to cut away some of it because it's a little bit too muddy, right? And then we want to make sure we give it a little emphasis. Right? And if you are having an issue kind of hearing what's going on, turn up your volume on your headphones or whatever you're actually using, and you can hear it a little bit better. And I'm going to take away this high as well. All right, so I think that's more of the subby bass that we actually, or kick that we actually have. So let's go to the, second one. And mostly I like to just really EQ things first. That is like my main priority, is kind of EQing everything just to make sure it's at a decent level and the clarity is there for whatever I'm doing. So I'm gonna click on this next Pro channel here, double click this EQ, and let's do this one. All right, I'm gonna take off that low. I'm trying to say, yes, the low pass. Right, so now this gives you a harder kick, and when you're actually layering your kick, you want to make sure one gives it the more sub sound and one gives it more of the piercing through the track. So what that'll do is it'll allow your kick to be heard on multiple devices. So like if you on like regular like cheap headphones, you should be able to hear the kick pretty good in there. Or if you're on a major system, you still should be able to feel the thump of the kick and feel the way it's actually piercing through the track. So that's kind of why I like to do it this way, so I can kind of hear and feel exactly what's going on with the kick itself. If you wanted to, you could add a compressor on there, but I'll add it to more toward the drum bus so that you guys can kind of see how I make it all stick and glue together. And we'll get to that in a minute. So let's get on to our snare, which is the next one. And once again, we're going to take out that high pass, take out all this low end, just in case there's some muddiness that comes through the mix that we don't need or want. And I'm going to change the Q, and the Q makes it wider or smaller, so it doesn't matter which way you want to go. So I'm going to actually widen this out to make the mids of the snare kind of stick out. Right, so now we have a pretty nicely EQ'd snare. Let's go on to the hi-hat next. So I'm going to go to the hi-hat. Let's solo that, and let's pull up the Pro channel for it. Double click on the EQ, and we're definitely going to cut out the highs, or sorry, say the low pass or high pass filter. And as you can see, the hi-hats have some resonance down here in the lower frequencies. And what happens is that lower frequency will build up, and that'll cause your track to have some muddiness inside of it. So you want to kind of clean that up. So let's clean up this endpoint. So I'm cutting close to almost 200 hertz out of it. And then you can always kind of like boost different things if you wanted to. If you wanted to more sizzle, if you wanted more of the tin sound. Or if you wanted to kind of cut that, you can do that as well. And I'm thinking more of a cut for me. And that gives the hi-hat a little bit of a duct kind of feel. At least that's how I feel when I listen to it. So I'm going to stick with that. So now we have our drums on here. And now we want to do is go to our drum bus and then make it thump and kick and bounce and all that good stuff. So usually what I would like to do is put a clipper on the drums. Unfortunately, Cakewalk doesn't have a clipper that I know of. So if you do know of a clipper inside of Cakewalk, please leave it below in the comment section so I could find it. But I have seen that the Sonitus compressor really works really well with drums. So I'm going to go to Cakewalk folder and I'm going to go to the Sonitus compressor. So here's the Sonitus compressor. Once again, it has the same kind of setup on here. You have your threshold, your ratio, your knee, what type it is. And you have your gain option here and some output, your attack and release down here as well. You have a limiter as you can set on there, and you can set another control right here. So there's a lot of cool presets inside here that a lot of people don't really know about because they don't really use these effects that are come with Cakewalk. So if you hit on presets, right, you have an option for music. So you can have like, you know, something that prevents clips, your bass, some brass. You even have like a drum destroyer, which is really cool sometimes. You have a kick drum option, some vocals. So you can have a compressor for your snare and stuff like that. Right here, though, is where people probably don't really go, and that's the vintage options, right? So you have a Navi board, kind of a vintage compressor, Navi compressor. You have your LA2A, which is a classic compressor. You have your 1176, which is another compressor that a lot of people use and are familiar with. And you have like your vintage mix. But I really like this DBX 165. I think this one makes everything come up inside the mix and then kind of tames everything at the same time. I'm going to kind of show you guys what I am talking about. So, so right now, I know I want things to be lower. So I'm going to change this to about, let's do a -8, where we kind of want our kicks to, or drums to be at -8. And we're going to play it with this compressor. And I know you're saying, I don't hear anything. So let's do a bypass first so you can hear how it sounds without it. And it feels like everything is kind of leveled out now. Now there's not much space inside the drums like it was before. And then you can even go further with this and add some tape. So I'm gonna go over here to this Pro channel. Yes, even your buses have Pro channels. So I'm gonna minimize this one. I'm gonna minimize this, minimize the EQ. And I'm gonna right click in here and I'm going to insert a module. And the module I'm gonna do is gonna be called Tape Emulator. So I know a lot of people have talked about Luna and how Luna has a tape emulator on all of its tracks. In Cakewalk, you can actually use a tape emulator as well. So I'm not sure what the big hype was about the whole Luna thing, but neither here nor there. Let's just continue. Right. So now I have my tape added on here, and I'm going to show you the difference when you're actually using the tape with the compressor, right? So everything's loud. It's about 8.1 dBs, and I'm going to give it some more. I'm gonna give it some more volume, but it's not going to take up my headroom, and that's exactly what you want. I'm gonna add a little bit of noise. Right, and that's just from adding the tape on there with the compressor. I'm giving the drum some life now. Like it's giving it a nice warm feel on top of getting louder without actually going over on my headroom. So I have the same amount of headroom. It's just giving me a louder overall mix just from doing this inside of the bus. Right, so now we have our tape emulator and we have our compressor to kind of limit. It's basically working almost like a clipper for the track itself. So let's move on and let's work on some of the sounds. We can actually add like a little reverb to the snare, just so I can show you guys the difference between these two, the Sonitus one and the reverb. So let's go and add that on here. So I'm gonna do a send. Well, there's an option for a send, hit the plus sign. I'm gonna go and click on reverb. So I'm gonna use the Sonitus one first. So that gives it a really big reverb, and I can always turn it down so it's not so much on there. And if you double click, it'll bring it back to this default. So let's go and use the reverb. All right. So I think that's enough reverb for the snare. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily matter which one you use. I just don't understand why people don't use the reverb one. The Sonitus one is actually fine as well. Either one of them you can actually use. I think the reverb one gives you a little bit more options maybe than it does inside of the Sonitus one. But you guys be the judge of that. I'm just showing you what we can actually use inside here. All right, so let's move on to the strings. So let's go and solo these strings. We're gonna go through the same setup. Open up the channel, open up the mixer. And we're definitely gonna get rid of some of this ending here. So we're probably gonna take about maybe 80 Hertz. Let's give it a little boost on this midsection here. And for this one, I'm gonna actually put on the filter for it. I'm not gonna cut it off. I'm just gonna bring up that whole section down here. So it'll bring up all this noise level down here for the strings, for the highs, right? Right, so this is just a simple way to kind of just EQ out that track itself. So now what we want to do is add some effects, and there's a lot of effects that a lot of people don't know about are inside of Cakewalk. I'm going to show you a couple of them right now. So you all know about the Cakewalk ones, the Sonitus, and the other old school Cakewalk plugins that you have, even your vocal strip and your percussion strip. But Overloud actually comes with Cakewalk as well, and that will be where the reverb is and this TH3. So you have your TH3 that comes with Cakewalk by Bandlab, and like I said, it's absolutely free. So you get a chance to actually mess with this, and you can actually expand it out to make it a little bit bigger, which I always thought was pretty cool. You have this TH3 section here for your banks, and the banks come with a whole bunch of presets that they've currently already made. So if you hit on like the TH3 for Cakewalk, I believe it's 15 that I like, right? And it gives you like your amps and your mic positions. So I'm gonna bypass it for now, and then I'm gonna turn it back on so you guys can hear the difference. So right now it's bypassed. Let's take off the drum so you can just hear the strings. Right, this is without it on, and this is with it on. Right, so you have that option in here to do some really cool things with these effects. So I'm gonna do this other one, I believe is this pop one. Right, so if I double click on that, so you have one that has like a chorus, a phaser, it has a digital delay, it has a flanger on here, and it also has this amp on here. But I want to turn this down because this one is, I think, what makes it sound really weird at times. And I'm just gonna play it. right? You have your mic position and you have a spring reverb at the end. Right, and now basically just kind of transform the track. So if I go back to without it and with it, right? So these are different things to give your tracks different feels, different sound effects that can actually enhance the sound itself. And then you can always add, you know, your synths. Let's do a reverb on here. This makes it a little bit wider. So if I take it off, it's a little further back. This makes it a little bit more expansion of the sound itself with this reverb on here. And that's kind of what you want. Right, so that's one way to kind of get all the stuff set up the way you want to inside of the track itself. And we're still kind of in our range. We're at 6.8 right now, a negative 6.8, and that's still fine. So next up we have the bass. So let's go to the bass and see what that's about. And we're going to bring up the Pro channel once again. Like I said, my main starting point is just EQing, making sure things are at a level where I want it to be, cutting off frequencies that I don't want. That's pretty much where I start. All right, so let's start with the bass. And I know I want to use a low pass filter. Cue this out. Right, just something really slight, just to kind of bring up the bass a little bit. And usually what you want to do is add one more piece in here. And I'm going to right click in here and I'm going to insert a module, and that module is going to be this saturation knob. So this will give your bass a little bit more oomph, as they call it, inside the track. I may have to turn it down in the overall volume just so that it doesn't go over what we want it to be. But definitely use some saturation on your bass. I'm going to turn it on the low, and I'm going to turn this up. Turn it off. Put it on. Right, so now we have the bass on here. I'm just going to turn it down some. All right, and moving right along, next up we have the electric piano. So let's click on that one. Let's go to our Pro channel, and we want to make sure we can clean this up as well. All right, and I'm gonna take off all of these other solos. Let's solo this. what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna turn on this console. Now I usually like the N type. It just gives it a little bit more feel to me. And then also what I want to do is I'm going to add some effects, and I'm going to go back to this TH3. And I'm just going to add some modules in here that I feel should actually work. Let's do a phaser for sure. Let's do a wah-wah. Yeah, let's add that on here. Oh. Let's turn up the sensitivity. And let's turn up the filter. Maybe a flanger as well. Turn up some of the delay. Turn down the speed. Turn up the depth. All right, let's hear it in context. Let's add some reverb. All right, and last up is the strings. So let's see if we can kind of EQ these up first. I definitely want to take out those. All right, let's add a compressor on here. All right, and let's add some reverb. Yep. Let's actually add some delay on this one. All right, so now everything sounds pretty even on this end right now. I really like the way it's meshing together. The effects that you actually add on here, all these are straight from Cakewalk, so no need to go anywhere else outside of that. I wanted to do some arrangement, but it looks like the video is taking a little bit longer than I thought it would actually take, and that's perfectly fine. So we'll be doing the arrangement video on the next installment of this series. So if you haven't already, make sure you are liking and subscribing to the channel. If you do want this CWP file, it'll be available below in the link in the description of the video, or you can just go to xelohh.com and this file will be labeled with mix on it so that you'll know that this is the mix version of the beat itself. So The first one will just be just the beat, which will be a hip hop beat. And the second one will be the mix of that hip hop beat. And all these steps that I did in here, you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to use all these effects in here as well. And even change things if you wanted to. If you wanted to follow along with this video, you can go back to the beginning, download the first CWP file with just the beat, and actually go through all the steps that I've gone through for the mixing of the sounds and the effects that I've added on here. And you can do all that for free inside of Cakewalk. So I hope this does help you guys out in the long run of when you're actually trying to mix down your tracks. And you always want your mix to have some headroom so that your mixing engineer will have that headroom available for them to actually make the song mastered. So right now, I think it's at a really good point. It's probably around like that's -6 dB. Maybe if it's a little bit over, that's perfectly fine. But that's kind of where I like to be. You can do it however you want to. If you want it to be louder, that's perfectly fine. If you want it to be lower, that is perfectly fine as well. But you will get the CWP file available on xelohh.com. And if you do want to actually contribute a little bit more, I do have an option on there to pay what you want, but it is absolutely free to actually download these files. But with that being said, that's pretty much the end of this video. If you haven't already, make sure you are liking and subscribing to the channel. And once again, it's your boy, X.E.L.O. Until next time, people. Peace.
AutoRewind.